Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Honor the Feminine podcast. I'm your host, Shannon Ledford, and today we have Flora Ware with us, and we're about to have some fun. So as you know, we start each episode with an image and story from my travels, because when I was traveling out in the world is where I really started to hear my intuition again. When I got away from the day-to-day chaos and noise and expectations, I really started to hear her whispers. And I know she was always there, but she'd just gotten muffled. So today, our image is called Ha Pa Flower, and it was taken in Singapore. No one can escape experiencing the renowned tiger balm while traveling in Southeast Asia. Many believe it is a miracle cure-all with its poignant aroma and slick feel. The Ha Pa Villa in Singapore was built by the Ha Pa brothers from the fortune they amassed selling the famed tiger balm throughout the world. The grounds of the villa are filled with eccentric artistic pieces, and hours can be spent exploring all of the incredible designs. Many of the scenes depict tales from Chinese mythology and reverence to the divine feminine. The flower design appeared on the back of a stage. The beauty was in the details and the worn look of having survived the elements. And this is the image that reminds me of our guest today, Flora Ware. Flora, welcome.
Thank you, Shannon. Thanks for having me here.
Oh, I'm excited. So share yourself with us. Tell us about you.
Okay, sure. Well, first of all, I wanted to say that I thought it was just interesting that you chose that photo because I was raised by two parents that were big Tiger Balm fans. So, so really, like, since my earliest memories, whenever there was any kind of congestion, cold, the Tiger Balm always came out. So I'm very familiar.
So you can like feel the aroma of it. That thrills me.
Oh yeah. Big time. Yeah. For many decades, using the Tiger Balm, being raised with that. So just an interesting, you obviously really tuned into something there. So I was born to two lovely hippie parents here on the west coast of Canada. My father's a gardener, hence the name Flora, horticulturalist, and my mother is an artist and worked as a librarian for her working career. And I had a beautiful childhood growing up. Music, lots of love in the home, and then my little brother came along, and for the most part, a very happy childhood. For the most part, right? There's always things, and I say that only because I just was raised in a way that I felt very connected to the divine, always, and especially we spent a lot of time outside as a family, and instead of going to church on Sundays, we always went for a nature walk, and that was our temple, and that was the way that we communed with the divine. And I remember one summer day seeing the heat waves rising up off of like a meadow or whatever it was, like seeing those heat waves and asking my dad, "Is that God?" And he, chuckled, and he just said, "Yes, it's all God." And so, from that,
that is gorgeous. I mean, that's right. So beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was fortunate that way that I didn't necessarily ever disconnect from that feeling connected to divine. And my mother brought me to my first full moon women's circle when I was 15, and that experience really changed my life and anchored in a lot, the reverence and the understanding of the divine feminine in a very tangible way. And, I had an interesting journey then in my 20s. I'm a performer. I'm a triple threat, a singer, actor, dancer, and was, in a way, I look back on it now. I'm almost 40 now, so I've got a few decades of being able to look back on some of my motivations in my early 20s, and I feel like I confused the deep inner calling that I had, Shannon, that was, I feel like I meant to inspire people. Like I really felt that even though I was a small town girl from, nowhere, that I was meant for great things. I feel that in a way I confused that with my performing talent and was pursuing fame and was pursuing recognition and was, craving, that acknowledgement. And so, because of my experience with circles and feeling very spiritually connected, when I started doing, sacred theater performances at festivals, for example, I was very good at dressing up and playing the role of the priestess. And feeling then, at 23, 24, that I was, embodying that. And yet, certainly now I realize that I really was, just in costume, I was really just playing that role. And it took me many, many more years of getting really honest with myself, going through, doing more shadow work, before I really started embodying it and walking the path of the priestess and what that really meant, walking the talk, if you will. So, so that's a bit about me, that the moon circles and the goddess, I was introduced to it 25 years ago, but have I been really walking the path for 25 years? Not completely, right? Because like I said, some of that was a bit of role playing and dressing the part. But certainly this has been, this kind of spiritual work, and certainly with women's circles, it has been a huge part of my life, and it's a big part of who I am.
I just think that's so gorgeous, because so few of us grew up with that, right? Like the sisterhood and the circles has come in my late 30s and early 40s to my life. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how I mean, now that I'm really in it, I wonder how I didn't know I was missing it a few years ago. But as I feel back into my childhood, which was also, pretty loving and normal and fantastic, I can feel the lineage of my magic from my mom, right? And
beautiful,
and the way that she moved in the world, and the way that she interacted with the world. And so the embodying part's so beautiful, because I feel like even now, in my early 40s, as a new concept comes to me and I can feel the truth in it, often I will speak into it first. I sort of call it playing lip service to it, right? And then I will feel it spiral in, and I'll find myself embodying it more over days, weeks, months, however long that particular spiraling is. So I think there's such a beautiful visual there around embodying, right? And so can you speak into a little what it looks like and what it feels like when you're priestessing your path?
Yeah, I would love to. What it feels like for me, and what the biggest difference has been, say in the last decade, is in more consistently showing up. I feel like, in my 20s I had a bit of an attitude of like, which is funny now, but it was like, oh yeah, been there, done that. Like, I know all about that. So I don't need to do that every single day, or I don't need to do a ritual every full moon or every new moon or whatever, because it's like, I know about that. right. And so, but when, and I love how you put that, when you're priestessing your path, there is always more to learn. There is always a deeper level that you can take it. And so there's no just, well, certainly not no one and done kind of mentality, right? Where it's like you're showing up every day because you are on the path, and these practices that we do are called practices for a reason. We're needing to constantly practice them. And so the biggest difference for me has been in that in that devotion. I love to use the word devotion because it carries the energy of love. Right. And so what am I devoted to? What are my devotions? Or the other word I like to use are, what are my blissciplines?
Oh my God. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's not original to me. I'm not going to take credit, but I forget even where I first heard it. But where are you disciplined around your bliss? And so that is, that has been the biggest difference for me in feeling like now I'm really embodying my spirituality and not just playing the role of priestess.
Well, and I think there's so much beauty there because when we play the role, there's this idea of the way it should look and the perfection of it. I have found in priestessing my path, what I've encountered is a lot of messiness often. Just along the way, 'cause you're in it and you're living into it,
Yeah. I can relate to that, for sure. the shadow work that is necessary to do the light work. And I've definitely been there in messy times, and even had people say to me that I seem to be dedicated to taking the more difficult path. and I don't see it that way, because that's how I'm finding not just meaning for myself, but also, really, really uncovering the wisdom from the wounds, really getting the lesson from it all. So there is a messiness, and there's also just a huge lesson for me has been about being in the journey instead of thinking that there's always going to be some destination that I'm going to arrive at. Like I'm finally going to get to enlightenment station, and then I just stay there or something.
And it's all going to fall into place, and it's right. and then I'm just going to coast along.
Yeah, exactly. One day I'll finally just get it, and then what? Oh no, there's just always more to get. So it's a journey, and sometimes it's messy. You're absolutely right.
And I think there's something so beautiful. I've been feeling into that old story of mine around that in order to be enlightened or spiritual, I had to only turn into the light. And it's become very clear to me, in particular in like the last 18 months, how much beautiful medicine is in the shadow for me. And that it's really this beautiful dance of both. And that I really bypassed a lot of that shadow by turning so fully into the light because of this old story that I thought that in the light is where the enlightenment is or something. Right. Whereas true enlightenment comes from embracing both our light and our shadow. Yeah. And I was recently listening to a great interview with Monica Palaio, who calls herself the shadow expert or the shadow coach or something. And she said something that was very profound for me, that in our shadow is also our gifts that we are afraid of. Not just because a lot of times we can think of the shadow as like our weaknesses, the things about ourselves that we don't, like or approve of. But when she said that too, that our greatest gifts that we're afraid of are in our shadow as well, that really, a light bulb went off. I was like, right, because like you said, we have to go through this process of uncovering those old stories that we tell ourselves. Like for me, I already mentioned it, that I'm a nobody from a small town story.
And who am I to think that I could be great? Who am I to think that I could make a difference in this world? Who am I to stand up and say, I could be a spiritual teacher or a leader? Like, that is a big part of the gift in my shadow that I've been afraid to bring into the light is around that leadership, and that it doesn't matter where I've come from or the population of the town that I grew up in, right? It doesn't matter at all.
And I grew up in a small town in California as a farmer's daughter, right? And so my proving was I went and became a corporate lawyer in Manhattan to prove that I could. Mm-hmm. And guess what? I can, but why would I want to, right? And so, I can really so relate to that. And in making all of these choices, in creating this appearance of proving how valuable I am regardless of these roots that I now just adore and love and see the value of. Yeah, that you went on quite a journey there from one extreme to the next. Yeah, I live that way a bit.
Yeah,
I went from there to traveling all over the world as a travel photographer. So, I like to play in extremes. Makes me feel alive.
Yeah, amazing. Well, that's amazing. There's just so much that we go through when we are individuating as ourselves, as adults, in our 20s. There's just so much. And I started my family late in life, I think because I felt like I had so much individuating to do in my 20s. But there was, there's just, the self-worth piece and the proving of our self-worth and what we're capable of. And even, I've been starting to unravel some stories about where I've limited myself because I didn't want to be too successful out of respect for the level of success that my parents achieved. It's really interesting there too, like not wanting to surpass them too much. So if that makes any sense, I hope that it does. It's been really interesting to realize that there's been ways that how I've held myself back.
It's interesting because I think what you're speaking into is that we all have some story like that, right? And so while mine isn't around my parents, I realized recently that it's around my sister and not outshining her so that she had room to shine in this weird thing but wait, if I just shine my light, I give her permission and everyone else around me permission to shine theirs. And so there's been this weird, I've had that realization recently that that's where sort of and outshining her out of ego as youngsters and in my teens and early 20s. And then like really shutting that down. Yeah. And now feeling into how that plays out between us and how it plays out for me. And this is something I imposed on our relationship, right? So it's fascinating where those places are. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I'm hearing you use the language of the big leap, right? And that's one of that was definitely my strong upper limit that I identified, was the fear of outshining. And that's been, even having that bit of information has been really eye-opening for me to realize just what you said, that if my fear is that I don't want to outshine anyone, and yet that's my gift, is my light, and to give permission others to shine, it can feel like such a double-edged sword. And lately I've been actually had a couple, like very recently, I've had a couple experiences to get, feedback and reflections from others that has really made me realize that so often our gifts are our downfalls as well, that they can be both in this really way. I'll just give you a quick example that I'm a confident communicator. I can, maybe chalk it up to my Gemini moon if I wanted to, but like I can talk to anybody, and I'm a good communicator, and I love chatting with people, and I don't mind having a superficial conversation about the weather because I'd rather just, be chatting with the stranger on the bus bench. Like I can talk to anybody. So that's a gift. That's a skill. That's a strength. And yet it's my downfall when I don't use enough, caution in my communication, and I speak off the cuff, and I'm maybe a little bit too blunt in certain situations. So you know what I mean? Like it's that gift and that downfall. They can be the same thing, and that's been very fascinating for me lately to realize that.
Well, and we're just back to that dance of the light and the shadow,
right? Yeah.
I mean, it's beautiful.
Yeah, that's so true. I hadn't, but it is, that's exactly it. And I hadn't really looked at it that way until you just said it, thinking of it like, strength, weakness, light, shadow, and that it's two sides of the same coin. Yeah. Yeah, it's so true.
I think that where that's up for me the most right now is that I'm a warrior. So I bring a lot of warrior energy, right?
Right.
And so, I've had this old story around that in order to be seen as powerful, I had to be fierce and like prove to you how powerful I was and like stand really in that all the time. Mm-hmm. And what I'm realizing is as I soften into my warrior, that's actually more where the power is. Knowing that I can tap into the fierceness of her when that's required versus mm-hmm. this all the time in the proving.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's so true. And that's, I have that too. And it's not that we want to lose that fierceness, and we need to, stand up. We need to shout it out. We need to fight when it's right, like you said. And yet we can also be the feminine warrior where we're really holding the same strength, but in softness. Yeah, that's a powerful lesson.
Yeah, it's one that I'm walking right now a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, and mine is in mindful communication. Yeah.
And you and I could talk a month from now, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, and likely the work that's up for us is in a different area.
Totally.
Yeah. And then we could talk a year from now, and we would have cycled through other areas and be back to this area.
Yeah. Well, I'm back on working on communication.
But it speaks so beautifully.
Coming up for me again.
Yeah. But it's that spiral actually speaks so beautifully to what you were talking about before around, I know about the new moon ritual or the full moon ritual, and so I don't have to, participate in that because I know what that's about. But we show up at every new moon and every full moon as a different woman.
Yes. Yeah.
And so we show up on those ways in which it's like, this is around again. I thought I'd dealt with this. I thought this was gone, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But when it comes back around, it's different and you're different. So, yeah. We're going to take a sacred pause right here and drop into visioning for just a moment. Ava and I did a bonus episode recently on visioning and why it's become so important to us around setting up a structure that we can flow into in the coming year. And I'm wondering about, do you vision? Do you set a structure? How in advance do you set a structure? Do you have some tools to do that? I have been visioning for a number of years, but it's changed over time. And I love dropping into new ways. And the way that we're visioning this year is on a big vision macro level, and then getting down to the micro level, the ins and outs and the details and the timings to really set the structure. if you would like to do that with us, we're sort of opening the vaults to the behind the scenes. So if you're listening to this in real time at the end of November 2017, we are offering a virtual visioning session with us. It's a group session on Sunday, December 3rd. And it's going to be really fun. And it's not going to be a how-to. It's going to be a jump in. So it's going to be 3 hours of really jumping in, and you will leave with a really good sense of your vision for 2018 and how you're going to start to really flow into that. And for me, that creates enthusiasm, and it's been really, really fun. So if that sounds exciting to you, if you want to ignite your vision for 2018, I invite you to come over to rememberingdivineunion.com and sign up to join us. All right, back to the show.
I'm so glad you brought up spirals, because that's exactly what it is. And, ideally we're in an upward spiral in that way, where we are learning and like up leveling, but we're still, like you said, we're still spiraling through the same lessons. And so we do need to keep on coming back to these touch points, but then we've learned a little more and we take it up a little bit more. And there's a fascinating study, is a system of study called spiral dynamics. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but
just the littlest bit.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, I'm no expert either, but it talks about that concept that how our consciousness evolves. It follows a spiral pattern. It's exactly like that. And what's really fascinating is that you can look at the evolution of consciousness at the individual level, that we go through this same process from birth to adulthood, and then continuing through adulthood. And you can also look at the evolution of consciousness from like prehistoric humans to modern humans, that you see the same evolution on a longer and larger scale. And in these spiral patterns where we're up leveling a little bit, going back around to the same levels, just up leveling a little bit, we're going around. And that's why I'm just so passionate about working with the moon cycles and the cycles of nature, because natural time is cyclical. So here we are trying to operate within a linear concept of time and a Gregorian calendar that is so misaligned, but because here we are in the natural time. And so that's been something in my life where it's like, I'm trying to always be attuned to the natural time while still in some ways being forced to live within this linear time. So there's always that dance as well.
Yeah. And I resisted, really feeling into my cyclical rhythms. And as I started to release some of that resistance and really started to, track my moon cycle, feel into the cycle of the moon in the sky and the seasons. Oh, how much more held do I feel being a little more in tune with that? Even just a little more,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's, I hear that story again and again from women, and I certainly have experienced it. And, today, in fact, my moon blood started this morning, and I thought, great, I'm going to be really grounded in my body. I just felt like, of course it started today. And in fact, yesterday I was traveling. So I really actually did give some gratitude. I was like, thanks for waiting, because I thought you might start yesterday, and that would have been a little bit problematic. I said, thank you for starting today. And I just feel that way. Honoring our cycles, honoring our moon blood, and honoring the cycles of nature and the moon is, that brings us right to the topic of this podcast. It's an honoring of the feminine.
Yeah. And that goes so beautifully into how do you honor the feminine and stay in touch with your intuition?
Yeah. How I honor the feminine is because I identify as feminine, that I'm honoring myself. So any way that I can honor myself, I see as honoring the feminine. And that means that means any number of things. Like today, I'm taking it a little bit easy. I know to slow down when I am on my cycle, and I'm happy to. I welcome that. Mm-hmm. I welcome that ebb in the cycle, and then for the rest of my, it's certainly leading up to ovulation. I'm in a flow, and I'm a very active person, so I do enjoy being active and on there and getting things done, and I'm ambitious, and I love that side of me too. But I also know when to go in. Honoring the feminine in a greater sense for me does truly mean the commemorating, the acknowledgement of this turning of the seasons. Mm. It's it's in, just how I revere and honor nature, Mother Nature, and the cycles of the moon. I've been living in the city now for about 7 years. And, I feel like I have to work a little harder to be connected to nature in the city. And I live just outside of Vancouver, BC, Canada. So we're a very nature connected city as it is. But I still have to work a little harder because there's still light pollution. There's still electromagnetic frequency everywhere. There's still traffic noise, so that being aware of the moon cycle, taking myself out for a walk after my son's in bed and, my wife can just stay home. I said, I'm going to go take a moon walk. She knows, she knows this about me. She's like, go ahead. And, these things that I have to try a little harder. And that's all the ways that I honor the feminine in a way of, my awareness. And of course now, for many years, I've been very vocal. I'll be that person on your Facebook feed that's like, it's a full moon tonight, or happy solstice, and making sure that this, sharing that information. And by now people know to turn to me to ask if they have a question, like about the more obscure ones. So what is Imbolc, Flora? And
Tell me more about Beltane.
Yeah. So what is Beltane? Yeah, and what does it mean? Why are you always talking about the new moon? Well, great. I'm glad you asked this question, because that is all part of honoring the feminine flow, the feminine way, and bringing that into balance for myself in my divine masculine energy, like I said, where I am ambitious and I love being active. And so that's where I love bringing the feminine and masculine into balance for myself. Yeah.
You made me laugh with with sort of the pagan ritual and the moons and stuff, because it's such a beautiful indicator of where I've come in the last few years because of the way my news feed looks on a new moon and a full moon, or on summer solstice. It's lovely.
Of course. Yeah. Of course.
There's so much beautiful recognition. And so even if I may not be quite as tapped in, because we all are more or less tapped in at different times, I'm like, oh, yeah, okay.
You're reminded of it. Exactly. Yeah. And isn't that the beauty of being, of creating the community that you want to be surrounded by? And so that even, like you said, if you've been a little bit, tuned out, and you're going to be reminded, you're going to have that reflection. And Facebook is just, it's a mirror, and we can, we can consciously, literally we can curate who and what we see on our newsfeed. And so then we can't forget. We're like, oh, right, it is a new moon, or it is a full moon, because someone's going to be posting about it. And then you're like, thank you for reminding me. I'll go light my candle.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So good. So how does all of this inform the work that you do in the world in this moment?
Well, Shannon, this is my work in the world, really. Yeah, which has been such an incredible opening and transformation for me, because again, back to the overcoming the stories that we have, just whatever, these limiting thoughts that we've had. I 5 years ago, I would have never thought that I could make money from talking about moon magic. That's just was, what? You're crazy. And yet I am.
And I think it's so beautiful because I think our collective energy has shifted to allow more for that,
Yeah, absolutely.
That maybe 5 years ago it would have been more difficult, or there would have been more barriers, that as we collectively are desiring more of this as the feminine rises, we're primed to be like, who knows about this? Who can help me feel into this more?
Yeah, and that's exactly where I came to, so like I mentioned earlier, my first circle was in 1993, and there was a big upheaval in 1992, 1993. In 1992, I believe it was, Clarissa Pinkola Estes had just published her Women That Run with the Wolves. Or maybe it was published in early 1993. And in 1993, also in Ireland, there was a huge convergence conference of women that was all about basically reactivating the divine feminine. They relit the sacred fire, Bridget's sacred fire in the Temple of Kildare in Ireland.
Wow, I didn't know any of this. This is exciting.
Yeah, so her sacred temple had been... Oh, I don't even need to get into it, but throughout the Middle Ages had been attacked and destroyed 17 times at least, and then rebuilt. And then at some point it finally did go under, which, is metaphorical for how the divine feminine and witches or priestesses in general had to really go underground. But then in 1993, her flame, her sacred fire was relit. Women Who Run with the Wolves came out, and there was a resurgence. There was that in Canada too. There was an incredible documentary that came out called Goddess Remembered. And then there was another series that came out called The Burning Times. So in the early 90s, so I was part of that wave. I was part of that wave in the early 90s. And then, quite honestly, Shannon, I don't know if it just subsided a little bit or I was paying less attention because, like I said, I was doing my own thing in the early 20s, and I thought, oh yeah, I know all about this. But then now in the last 5 years, I've really been feeling this it's like this second wave, if you will, right? And that feeling of people looking around, saying, who knows about this? Like you said, who knows about this? Who are the leaders? Who are the teachers? And so there I was in a position, thinking, I guess I am. I guess I really am. And really overcoming my own, if we're going to deep dive here, Shannon, my biggest fear was because I was still holding the fear of persecution from the witch burning times quite viscerally in my body. And every time I went to really, put myself out there, to use that, quite overused statement, but put myself out there, there would be that accompanying fear. And for many years, I didn't understand that. I really didn't understand that. I thought, I'm a confident woman. What is going on? And I had, once I really understood that that's what it was, that it was an old fear that lived in my body, I was able to work through that so much quicker because I suppose in a way I finally realized that it wasn't even mine. It was fear from the collective unconscious, right? So when I realized that fear that was holding me back wasn't mine to own or to keep, and I certainly didn't want to keep it anymore, I was able to really move through that and heal it quickly. I'm still healing it. And I'm now, whenever I speak out about that, women just are they just open up to me. They literally flock to me. They Facebook friend me. They private message me and they say, oh my goddess, Me too. So this, what was the original question? Oh, how does this inform on my work? Right. Well, so there I was, a few years ago, just realizing that this is my soul's work, and not knowing, well, is there going to be money in this? Is this just going to be another passion project? Right. And yet delight, to my delight, I am making a living at it as a spiritual life and business coach, as a Moon Circle Priestess, as a goddess guide with the archetypal work that I do. And now as an author and a speaker, I'm getting more into that. And I'm speaking out about this because I feel it's important for women to recognize that the fear that they could be feeling is from this collective unconsciousness of the fear of persecution, that the echoes of the burning times are still very much affecting us. And we, but we are in a time now, especially Western women in the 21st century, that we do have a certain level of safety. Mm-hmm. And since I've been out of the spiritual closet, well, I was never in the spiritual closet. I can be that very, just that very confident person that other people feel safe to come out. And I'm also out as a queer woman, and I'm just out and proud. And so other people, they're drawn to not even necessarily to work with me, but to be my friend on Facebook or to be in my goddess group because they want to be as out and proud, and they are still in the closet about being a pagan to their family, or, them, maybe something else about their, sexual orientation too. And so that's
so many levels that is how it all I'm just me. I'm out to the world as a queer feminist witch, and I just am proud of it. And that is, it's amazing. It's amazing to me that I can be fully who I am and in my power and in sharing my magic. And this is my business now. It's incredible. Well, and I think one of the things too that intertwines with this, the persecution that we hold in ourselves from lineage, is this idea around the soul contracts we as women have made with each other through the years to keep each other small for safety.
Oh, yes.
And that we're in a time when we no longer have to play small because it's safe to be big. Mm. And unraveling some of that has been some really deep work I've been really feeling into in the last 6 months. And it's amazing, right? But all of it comes back to the persecution, and that this wasn't an idea of playing small for small's sake. It was playing small to stay safe.
Yes.
And that we don't have to do that anymore. And that we can activate that in each other and shine that light. So much beauty there.
Yeah.
Thank you for speaking into the persecution too, because I think we dance around it a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I've shared my story of remembering being burned at the stake, other women have stepped forward. Like I said, I've said me too. Other women have stepped forward, and they remember being hung. They remember being beaten to death and drowned. They remember being, just awful, terrible violence. And yet, like you said, now we are in a position, it's incredible. The first time in, let's say, written history, but at least modern history, many thousands of years, that women, we can own property, we can vote, We can have businesses. We have access to power. And right now, the privileges that we enjoy as Western women, we can use them for such good, because the only thing holding us back is our own fear of our own power, because we can reach out and we can grab it. And working together with our sisters, like you said so beautifully, where we can inspire each other. And if that's not happening, if you're feeling triggered or jealous of another sister's power or success or whatever it is, then we can use that as information, saying, well, what is it about her that I am being triggered by? Is that something that I in fact want for myself? And the more consciousness we bring to around that. But that is so much, I work a lot with power, understanding our own power, understanding my own power, because we really are we're at a whole new game now, as I know you know, Shannon, a whole new game where women can create big impact through our businesses, through our, through our lives and our work for the first time ever. I was just talking to a woman the other day who's in her 60s, and she wasn't able to get a mortgage. She's another queer woman. Because she wasn't getting married to a man, and the bank wouldn't give her a mortgage. Her brother had to be her co-signer. There needed to be a man on the mortgage when she first tried to get a mortgage. This is only a few decades ago. Yeah. And what I really hope that I can, what I want the young women to know is that this isn't very long that we have, we're not post-feminist. That is such bullshit. We are not in a post-feminist world by far. This is still new for us. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're navigating it together in ways that we haven't in the past, and that feels beautiful.
Yeah. So, and it's exciting. It is. Really exciting.
On that note, my love, are you ready for the random questions?
Sure, let's get random.
Okay. So if you could sit down with any woman, alive or dead, for a chat and tea, who would it be?
Oh, that is a great question. Ooh. Any woman, alive or dead. Oh, that's a tough one. Well, you know what? I'm just going to go with who first came to mind, because I would love to sit down and have tea with my mentor, Elaine Kalila of the Priestess Presence Temple. She's just so inspiring to me. And yeah, to think about actually sitting down and having tea with Elaine, amazing. So yeah, I'm going to go with that.
I love it. She is amazing. What she's done with Priestess Presence is really gorgeous. And the second question is, where would you most like to travel?
There's many places as well. And I'm fortunate that I have visited many places too. But right now, let's see, where is calling me? I actually didn't expect that to come up. Greece. I want to visit the ancient goddess temples of Greece. Yeah.
Gorgeous.
And I love Greek food.
Bonus.
Bonus, right? And like a swim in the Mediterranean. Yeah, that sounds nice. Yeah, I want to go there.
So my love, how do we reach out and connect to you and get more Flora in our lives?
Well, if anyone listening is on Facebook, I'd love to invite you into my group, which is called Awaken the Goddess Within. So I do hang out a lot in my goddess group on Facebook. And my website is Strength and Soul Wellness, strengthandsoulwellness.com. I'm in business with my wife, and she's the strength and I'm the soul. So that's where we're at, and where you can find me online, a little online home.
I love it. And we will put all of that in the show notes for this episode over at honorthefeminine.com, so people have a really easy way to click and connect with you.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing this beautiful gift of this podcast with the world, Shannon, and really contributing to these important conversations. It's so desperately needed to honor the feminine more, and not even more than the masculine, bringing it into balance with honoring the masculine as the way that we do. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for joining me today. This was so fun.
Yeah.
Hello again, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. It was such a pleasure to share Flora with you. I loved dropping in with her around her lineage with the goddess work and the circles that are so prominent right now, the lineage of this lifetime that she's really walked. And then that real healing around the persecution from past lifetimes, releasing those things that aren't hers. That is the beauty of shadow work and of stepping into that. If you would like to deepen in with Flora, you can go to the show notes for this episode over at honorthefeminine.com. I mentioned that Ava and I are doing Ignite Your 2018 Vision, a 3-hour virtual visioning session on December 3rd, 2017. If you would like to join us for that, you can go to rememberingdivineunion.com. If you would like to join the podcast community in our sacred space on Facebook, where I go live on a regular basis, you can join us at Honor the Feminine Daily. It's a fun place to feel into how you honor the feminine each day. And it's been a place for me to really feel into how the way in which I honor the feminine is shifting and changing and growing and expanding. So I'd love for you to come and join me there. Finally, if you love this episode, please share it with a friend. That's how I find all of the podcasts I love, is through recommendations. And subscribe, because we have a couple of more amazing guests this year, and then we're going to be doing this big shift into 2018. All that visioning has created something really exciting, where the details of that are all falling into place, and I'll be sharing some of that. All right, everyone. Have a magical day.